The metal catwalk beneath my feet shuddered as something massive slammed against the support beam below. I froze, my flashlight beam trembling across the dark expanse of the oil rig. 30 miles offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, with nothing but black water stretching to the horizon, I was suddenly terrifyingly aware of how alone I was. "Hello?" My voice sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "Martinez? Kowalski? This isn't funny, guys." No answer came except the constant drone of machinery and the whistling Gulf wind. The night shift had 8 people total on this floating metal island. Yet somehow, I couldn't find a single soul. Just bloodstains leading across the main deck that I'd been following for the past 20 minutes. My name is Charles Whitaker, Night Watchman for Deepwater Horizon 2, and I was about to discover that some creatures aren't just campfire stories. It all started 3 nights ago. I'd been working this rig for nearly 7 months. Good money, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. At 38, with 2 failed marriages behind me and a drinking habit I was finally getting under control, the isolation suited me fine. My job was simple: patrol the rig during night hours, check equipment, make sure nothing was amiss, and keep an eye out for anyone trying to mess around with safety protocols. Tuesday night began like any other. I clocked in at 7 p.m., grabbed my thermos of coffee, and started my first rounds. The sun was already dipping below the horizon, painting the Gulf waters in deep crimson that matched the rust spots dotting our aging rig. Martinez passed me on his way to the communications center, nodding as he always did. "Gonna be a quiet one tonight, Charlie," he said, glancing up at the sky. "No scheduled supply boats, weather's clear." "Just how I like it," I replied, already reaching for my cigarettes. The first hint that something was wrong came around 10:30 p.m. I was in the east quadrant when all the lights on the lower deck suddenly went out. Not unusual in itself, power fluctuations happened, but the backup generators should have kicked in automatically. They didn't. I radioed Henderson in the control room. "Hey, we've got a blackout on lower east. Backups aren't responding." Static hissed for several seconds before Henderson's voice crackled through, sounding oddly strained. "Aware of the situation, stay where you are. I'm sending Kowalski." Something in his voice made the hair on my neck stand up. "Everything okay up there?" More static then. "Just some animal got on board somehow with the last supply delivery, probably a large dog." I laughed, relief washing over me. "A dog? All this for a stowaway dog?" Henderson didn't laugh back. "Charlie, if you see it, don't approach. Call it in. Immediately." "Sure thing, boss." I clicked off, still smiling. 7 months out here, and the most exciting thing was a dog. I almost hoped I'd find it first. I'd always liked dogs. I continued my patrol, now using my flashlight in the darkened sections. The wind had picked up, moaning through the superstructure like something in pain. The rig always made noise, creaking metal, humming machinery, the constant slap of waves against the supports. But tonight, those familiar sounds seemed muffled beneath that mournful wind. Rounding a corner near the storage containers, I caught a smell that stopped me cold. Anyone who's ever worked on these rigs knows the usual smells: oil, seawater, sweat, industrial cleaners. This was different, like wet fur mixed with something rotten, metallic, like blood. I swept my flashlight beam across the deck and caught a glimpse of something dark and viscous. Stepping closer, the beam illuminated a smear of what was undeniably blood, still wet enough to gleam under my light. "Henderson," I radioed immediately. "I've got blood on the deck near the east storage containers. Looks fresh." No response. "Henderson, control room? Anybody copy?" Still nothing but static. I tried all channels, growing increasingly uneasy as silence answered me. That's when I heard it. Not the wind, not machinery. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I whirled around, my flashlight cutting wild arcs through the darkness. The beam caught a pair of eyes reflecting back at me from between 2 containers. Not the eyes of any dog I'd ever seen. They were amber, intelligent, and far too high off the ground. Even hunched between the containers as it was, Whatever I was looking at had to be over 6 feet tall. "Hello?" I called out stupidly, as if whatever creature was staring at me would answer. "Who's there?" The growl came again, deeper this time, and the eyes blinked, slowly, deliberately, as if sizing me up. I'm not ashamed to say I ran. Anyone would have. I bolted for the nearest shelter, the tools shed 50 yards across the open deck. I could hear something moving behind me, not running but walking with unhurried confidence. The sound of claws clicking against metal sent ice through my veins. I reached the shed, slammed the door behind me, and fumbled for the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the key twice before managing to secure the deadbolt. Only then did I allow myself to breathe, to think. "This isn't happening," I whispered, pressing my back against the door. "This can't be real." Something sniffed at the crack beneath the door, a wet sound that made my stomach turn. Then came a scratch, testing the metal. Another scratch, harder this time. Then silence. I held my breath, straining to hear any movement outside. Nothing. Just when I started to think it might have left, something slammed against the door with such force that the hinges bent inward. I scrambled away, knocking over shelves of equipment as I retreated to the far wall. The radio at my belt hissed to life. Through waves of static, I heard Martinez's voice. "Charlie, where are you? We've got situation, control room. Henderson is, oh God." His transmission cut off in a scream that turned my blood to ice. Another slam against the door bent it further, the deadbolt beginning to tear free from the frame. "This isn't real," I repeated, pressing myself into the corner, surrounded by wrenches and pipe fittings. "Dogs don't get this big. This isn't real." The third impact tore the door half off its hinges, allowing a massive clawed hand, not a paw, a hand with opposable thumbs ending in 6-inch talons, to reach inside, feeling blindly for the lock. In that moment, I saw my death as clearly as I've ever seen anything. I would die here, torn apart by something impossible, something that shouldn't exist. No one would ever know what happened to us. Then the hand withdrew, and I heard a commotion outside, shouting, the sound of metal striking metal. Someone was out there fighting back. "Charlie!" It was Kowalski's voice, strained with effort. "Get out here! We need to get to the safe room." I wanted to tell him I was safer in here, but the bent door wouldn't protect me for long. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed the heaviest wrench I could find, clutching it like a lifeline. "Coming out!" I shouted, and before I could lose my nerve, I slipped through the damaged doorway into the night. Kowalski stood 10 feet away, wielding a fire axe. Blood streamed from a gash across his forehead, but he was alive. Behind him, something massive moved in the shadows, circling us. "What the hell is that thing?" I gasped, moving to stand back to back with him. "Not now," he grunted. "Safe room, control tower, move." We began sidling toward the central structure, where the control room and crew quarters were located. I could feel eyes watching us, tracking our movements. "Where are the others?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kowalski's silence told me everything. We made it halfway across the deck when the creature finally stepped into the dim emergency lighting. What I saw made my mind recoil, trying to reject the impossible image before me. It stood over 7 feet tall, its body a grotesque hybrid of man and wolf. Matted fur covered rippling muscles, but its proportions were all wrong. Too long in the limbs, its back hunched, yet somehow maintaining an almost human posture. Its face was the worst part. Not quite wolf, not quite human, with a muzzle full of teeth too numerous and sharp to be natural, pulled back now in what looked horribly like a smile. Kowalski pushed me forward. "Run! Now!" We sprinted for the control tower door, the creature's howl rising behind us like a promise of pain to come. I risked a glance back and saw it drop to all fours, accelerating with terrifying speed. Kowalski reached the door first, yanking it open. "Inside!" I dove through the doorway as he swung the axe one final time, catching the creature across its outstretched arm. Black blood sprayed across the deck as Kowalski backed inside, slamming the door just as the monster crashed against it. "That won't hold it for long," he panted, already moving toward the stairs. "Up! We need to get to the safe room." The safe room was on the third level, designed to withstand hurricanes and protect the crew in emergencies. Steel-reinforced walls, separate power and communication systems, food and water for days if necessary. As we climbed, the sounds of the creature trying to break through the door below us grew more frenzied. Metal screeched as claws tore into it. "What is that thing?" I asked again as we reached the second level. Kowalski's face was grim in the emergency lighting. "Don't know. Don't care. It killed Phillips and Rivera in the mess hall. Tore them apart while they were still screaming." My stomach lurched. "Henderson? Martinez?" "Haven't heard from Henderson since he called in the situation. Martinez was in the comm room last I knew." We reached the third level, the safe room just down the corridor. A crash from below told us the creature had broken through the entrance door. "It's coming," I whispered. Kowalski nodded, his face set in determination. "Get inside, I'll hold it off." "That's suicide!" "Maybe." He gripped the axe tighter. "But my sister's expecting her first baby next month. I promised I'd be there." His eyes met mine. "Someone has to make it off this rig, Charlie. Tell them what happened." Before I could argue, he shoved me toward the safe room door. "Go!" The sound of the creature bounding up the stairs galvanized me. I reached the safe room, turning to see Kowalski standing in the corridor, axe raised. The thing that emerged from the stairwell moved like liquid shadow, far faster than something its size should be able to move. Kowalski swung the axe in a perfect arc that would have taken a normal attacker's head clean off. The creature caught the axe mid-swing with one clawed hand, the blade cutting deep into its palm without seeming to cause it pain. With its other hand, it grabbed Kowalski by the throat, lifting him off his feet as if he weighed nothing. "Run!" Kowalski managed to choke out, still fighting even as the creature's claws began to sink into his neck. I should have helped him. I should have found a weapon. Should have done something. Instead, I backed into the safe room, my eyes locked with Kowalski's as the creature tightened its grip. The last thing I saw before slamming the door was Kowalski's body going limp, blood pouring from his throat, and those amber eyes shifting from him to me with unmistakable intelligence. I sealed the safe room door, engaging all three locks before collapsing against it. The reinforced steel wouldn't give way easily, but after what I'd seen, I wasn't certain it would hold forever. The room was empty. Whatever emergency had brought the others here before me, they were gone now. Or worse, they'd never made it. A sweep of my flashlight confirmed I was alone with some emergency supplies, a first aid kit, a satellite phone, and a bank of monitors showing feeds from cameras around the rig. Most were dark or showing static, but 3 still functioned. I watched in horror as the creature stalked the corridors, moving with purpose, searching. For me, it was hunting me. The satellite phone was my best hope. I grabbed it, dialing the emergency shore contact with trembling fingers. After several agonizing rings, a voice answered. "Gulf Coast Emergency Response. This is Operator 47. "This is Charles Whitaker, Night Watchman on Deepwater Horizon 2, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We have a code black emergency situation. Multiple casualties. Request immediate evacuation. Please verify security code, Mr. Whitaker." I fumbled for my ID card, reading the emergency code printed on the back. Alpha 7 Delta 9er 3. A pause. Verified. "What's the nature of your emergency, Mr. Whitaker?" What could I say? There's a werewolf killing my colleagues? They'd think I was insane or drunk. "Unknown hostile intruder," I said finally. "Possibly multiple intruders. They've killed at least 4 crew members that I know of. I'm secured in the safe room, but I don't know how long the door will hold." "Understood. Coast Guard has been notified. Helicopter dispatch estimated arrival time 90 minutes. Can you maintain your position until then?" 90 minutes. Looking at the monitors, watching that thing methodically searching the rig, I wasn't sure I had 90 seconds. "I'll try," I said. "Please hurry." As I lowered the phone, a new sound reached me, scratching, directly outside the safe room door. Not frantic or aggressive, but slow, deliberate, testing. On the monitor, I could see it standing there, head cocked to one side, listening. It knew I was inside. It ran one claw down the seam of the door, leaving a thin scratch in the steel. Then it did something that chilled me more than any of the horrors I'd witnessed so far. It spoke. Charlie's. The voice was distorted, guttural, as if human speech was difficult with its muzzle and fangs, but unmistakably forming my name. I can smell your fear, Charlie's. I backed away from the door, bile rising in my throat. This door won't hold forever, it continued, each word carefully enunciated. And I have all night. What do you want? I shouted, immediately regretting revealing I could hear it. A sound that might have been laughter rumbled from beyond the door. What does any predator want? To hunt? To feed? A pause. To transform. Transform? The word escaped me before I could stop it. You've seen the old movies, Charles. You know the myths. Another one of those terrible laughs. They got some things right. My mind raced through childhood memories of werewolf films, silver bullets, full moons, the curse passing to those who survive an attack. The Coast Guard is coming, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. A helicopter will be here in less than an hour. Good. The creature's tone was almost conversational now. More meat. It began scratching at the door again, harder this time, talons screeching against metal. I covered my ears, watching the monitors in horror as the door began to dent inward. That's when I noticed something on another screen, a figure moving on the lower deck. Someone else was alive. Squinting at the grainy image, I recognized Martinez's uniform. He was limping badly, one arm hanging uselessly at his side, but he was making his way toward one of the equipment lockers. The creature stopped suddenly, head lifting as if scenting the air. It turned from my door, moving with that unnatural speed back toward the stairs. No! I shouted. Martinez, run! But of course, he couldn't hear me. I watched helplessly as the monster descended to the lower levels, following Martinez's scent. I had a choice to make. Stay safely locked in the room and let Martinez die, or try to reach him before the creature did. Kowalski had sacrificed himself to give me a chance. I couldn't waste it by cowering here while another colleague died. I grabbed the first aid kit, a flare gun from the emergency supplies, and took a deep breath. The only other potential weapon in the room was a fire extinguisher. Not much against a creature that had shrugged off an axe blow, but better than nothing. Opening the door as quietly as possible, I stepped into the corridor. The scratch marks along the steel were deep, nearly a quarter-inch into solid metal. Whatever this thing was, it was strong enough to tear through the safe room given enough time. I moved carefully toward the stairs, straining to hear any sound of the creature. The rig felt different now. The familiar sounds of machinery seemed muted, as if the entire structure was holding its breath. Descending to the second level, I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows ahead. I froze, raising the flare gun. Charlie? Martinez's voice weak with pain. Is that you? He limped into view, his uniform soaked with blood from a deep gash across his chest. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. Jesus, Martinez, I whispered, moving to support him. I thought you were downstairs. I saw you on the cameras. Confusion clouded his eyes. Been trying to reach the safe room for an hour. That thing, it's hunting us, playing with us. It trapped me in the comm room, kept leaving and coming back like it was giving me chances to run. My blood ran cold. If Martinez had been up here the whole time, who had I seen on the cameras? I glanced back toward the stairwell. We need to get back to the safe room, now. Martinez nodded weakly. Did anyone else make it? I shook my head. Kowalski didn't make it. I haven't seen Henderson or any of the others. Supporting Martinez's weight, I began moving back toward the safe room. Each step seemed to echo in the silent corridor. Charlie, Martinez whispered suddenly, it can mimic voices. I heard it using Philip's voice, calling for help. That explained how it had lured some of the crew to their deaths. It was intelligent, calculating. This wasn't some mindless beast. It was a predator with strategy. We had almost reached the safe room when a howl echoed up from below, triumphant, celebrating a kill. Had there been someone else alive down there? Or was it trying to lure us out again? Almost there, I encouraged Martinez, whose breathing had become increasingly labored. Just a few more steps. The safe room door stood open as I'd left it. Just as we reached the threshold, Martinez stiffened beside me. "Charlie," he said, his voice suddenly calm despite his injuries. "Do you know why it's hunting us one by one instead of all at once?" I turned to look at him, unease creeping up my spine. "What?" Martinez's eyes met mine, and in the dim emergency lighting, I saw something change in them. A flicker of amber replacing the brown I'd known for months. "Because it's more fun this way," he said, his voice distorting on the last words. I stumbled backward into the safe room as Martinez's body began to convulse. Bones cracked audibly as his spine contorted, his face elongating into a familiar muzzle. The transformation took only seconds, far faster than any movie had portrayed. Where Martinez had stood was now a second creature, smaller than the first but no less terrifying. It retained some features that were recognizably Martinez, a scar on its shoulder from a drilling accident last year, the torn remnants of his uniform still clinging to its changed body. "You're one of them," I whispered, raising the flare gun with trembling hands. The creature that had been Martinez tilted its head. When it spoke, the voice was a grotesque mixture of the man I'd known and something inhuman. "Not one of them, one of us. Soon you'll understand." I fired the flare directly into its face. The magnesium burst into brilliant light, momentarily blinding it. The creature howled in pain, clawing at its eyes. I slammed the safe room door, engaging the locks just as something much larger hit the other side with devastating force. The first creature had returned. Through the monitors, I watched in horror as the two beasts communicated in growls and gestures outside my door. The smaller one, Martinez, pointed toward the lower decks, and they both turned to descend the stairs. They were hunting the rest of the crew, or plotting something worse. The satellite phone rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped it. "Mr. Whitaker, this is Coast Guard Lieutenant Reynolds. Our helicopter is inbound, ETA 30 minutes. We need you to get to the helipad for extraction. Can you confirm your status?" 30 minutes. The helipad was on the opposite side of the rig from the safe room. I'd have to cross open deck spaces, exposed corridors, with two of those things hunting for me. "I'm in the safe room on level 3 of the control tower," I said. "There are at least 2 hostile intruders. They've killed most of the crew. I don't think I can make it to the helipad safely." A pause. "Mr. Whitaker, the weather is deteriorating rapidly. This may be your only chance for extraction before the storm hits. The helicopter cannot land in high winds." I looked at the monitors again. Both creatures were now on the main deck, examining something I couldn't quite make out in the grainy footage. "I understand," I said finally. "I'll try to reach the helipad." "We'll have armed personnel on board," the lieutenant assured me. "Just get there." Armed personnel wouldn't matter if those things got to them first. I had to warn them. "Lieutenant, these intruders, they're not human. Standard weapons may not be effective." Silence on the line. He thought I was in shock or hallucinating. "Just get to the helipad, Mr. Whitaker. We'll handle the rest." The line went dead. I was on my own. I searched the safe room again, desperate for anything that might serve as a weapon. The fire extinguisher wouldn't do much damage, but it might provide a momentary distraction. The first aid kit contained scissors, useless against creatures that regenerated from an axe wound. Then my eyes fell on the maintenance checklist mounted by the door. Among the itemized emergency equipment was welding kit under floor panel 3. I moved to the 3rd floor panel, prying it up to reveal a compact welding kit used for emergency repairs. It included a small acetylene torch, not much of a weapon, but fire was one of the few things that most movie monsters seem to fear. With the torch and extinguisher, I had the beginnings of a plan. Not a good one, but better than waiting to be torn apart. I checked the monitors one last time. The creatures had moved out of camera range. Taking a deep breath, I opened the safe room door and stepped into the corridor, the torch in one hand, extinguisher in the other. The journey to the helipad would take me down to the main deck, across the production area, and up to the elevated platform on the far side of the rig. In normal circumstances, a 10-minute walk. Now a gauntlet through hell. I moved as quietly as possible down the stairs to the 2nd level. The smell of blood grew stronger. Kowalski's blood, still fresh on the floor where he'd fallen. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, listening intently before continuing to the ground level. The main deck was exposed on all sides, illuminated only by emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the metal surface. The storm the Coast Guard had mentioned was rolling in, the wind picking up and bringing with it the first spatters of rain. I'd made it halfway across the open space when a low growl froze me in place. I turned slowly to see the larger creature, the original one, watching me from atop a stack of supply crates. It made no move to attack, simply observing with those intelligent eyes. "I know what you are," I said, raising the torch. I'd already ignited it, the small blue flame feeble against the growing darkness. "Do you?" it replied, seeming almost amused. Its massive form shifted, muscles rippling beneath matted fur as it settled into a more comfortable position. "What am I, Charles? A werewolf." Saying it out loud felt ridiculous despite the evidence before me. "But werewolves aren't real." The creature's mouth pulled back in what might have been a smile. "Tell that to your friends." "Oh, wait!" It tilted its head mockingly. "You can't! They're dead!" Anger surged through me, momentarily overriding my fear. "Why are you doing this? Why us?" "Because you're here." It stood, stretching to its full height. Isolated, vulnerable, far from help. Its amber eyes gleamed in the darkness. And because I was hungry, it leapt from the crates with impossible grace, landing just 10 feet from me. I raised the extinguisher, preparing to spray it and then use the torch. "Martinez said you can pass it on," I said, trying to keep it talking while I formulated my next move. "The curse. Is that what he called it? A curse?" The creature seemed genuinely curious. Martinez embraced his new nature quite eagerly once he understood the power it brings. "You attacked him first," I realized, before any of us knew what was happening. He was alone in the comm room, easy prey. It took a step closer, but he was strong enough to survive the initial bite. Not everyone is. "And now you're going to do the same to me?" I backed away, matching its pace. "That depends on you, Charles. You've survived longer than the others, shown more resourcefulness." Another step closer. "You could be like us, or you could be meat. Your choice." The helicopter. I could hear it now, a distant thrum growing louder by the second. The creature heard it too, head tilting upward. "Your friends are coming," it said, "but they won't understand what's happening here. They'll see a traumatized survivor and perhaps a wild animal. They won't be prepared." It was right. The Coast Guard would be slaughtered the moment they landed. "You need to leave," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "The Coast Guard will have weapons." The creature laughed, a chilling sound between a growl and human amusement. "Bullets cannot kill what I am." "Maybe not," I agreed, "but fire might." I sprayed the fire extinguisher directly into its face, temporarily blinding it, then ignited the stream of chemicals with the torch. The mixture burst into flames that engulfed the creature's head and upper body. Its howl of pain was deafening as it thrashed wildly, clawing at the flames consuming its fur. I didn't wait to see more, running for the helipad as fast as my legs would carry me. The helicopter's spotlight swept across the rig as it approached, momentarily illuminating a second shape moving parallel to me. Martinez, or what had once been Martinez, cutting off my route to the helipad. I changed direction, ducking behind a housing unit as Martinez's transformed body loped past, hunting for me. The creatures communicated again in those strange growls and barks, coordinating their efforts to trap me. The helicopter was descending now, the spotlight fixed on the helipad. I needed to warn them, to tell them to stay away, but the only path was blocked by monsters. Then I remembered the flare cabinet near the emergency escape pods. If I could reach it, I might be able to signal the helicopter to keep its distance. I made my way along the edge of the deck, staying in shadows, using the growing storm as cover. The wind howled across the rig, driving sheets of rain that reduced visibility to near zero. A mixed blessing, harder for me to see, but harder for the creatures to smell or spot me as well. The flare cabinet was just ahead, mounted on a wall beside the life pod launch station. I reached it, hands shaking as I extracted a maritime flare gun, larger and more powerful than the one I'd used earlier. Loading a red flare, I aimed toward the helicopter and fired. The crimson light arced high into the night sky, momentarily turning the rain blood red as it descended. The helicopter veered away from its landing approach, circling higher. Through the storm, I could see the side door open, a figure with a loudspeaker leaning out. Deepwater Horizon, 2 personnel, return to helipad. Repeat, return to helipad for emergency extraction. They didn't understand. They thought the flare was a distress signal, not a warning to stay away. I loaded another flare, green this time, the maritime signal for danger, unsafe to approach, and fired. This one burst directly in front of the helicopter, impossible to misinterpret. The aircraft pulled back further, hovering at a safe distance. I had warned them, but had also given away my position. A howl cut through the storm, much closer than I'd expected. Turning, I found myself face to face with the first creature. Its fur was singed where I'd burned it, but otherwise it showed no lasting damage. Behind it, the second creature, Martinez, approached more cautiously. "That was unpleasant, Charles," the larger one growled, rain steaming off its superheated flesh. "I've reconsidered my offer. No more choices, just pain now." I backed toward the edge of the rig, the torch held before me like a talisman. Behind me was a 40-foot drop into storm-tossed waves. Before me, certain death or worse. The creature lunged, knocking the torch from my hand. It skittered across the wet deck, extinguishing instantly in a puddle. The extinguisher followed, torn from my grasp by a casual swipe of claws that left deep gashes in my forearm. Pain lanced through me as blood mixed with rain, washing away into the darkness. The creature inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring. "Your fear smells delicious," it said, "but your blood smells like power. You would make a formidable addition to our pack." "I'd rather die," I spat, clutching my wounded arm. "That can be arranged." It gestured to Martinez. "Hold him." The smaller creature circled behind me, powerful arms encircling my chest, claws digging into my flesh as it lifted me off my feet. I struggled uselessly against its inhuman strength. The helicopter spotlight swept over us, illuminating the tableau for anyone watching from above. "Witnesses," the larger creature mused, glancing upward. "How inconvenient." It turned back to me, jaws opening wide to reveal rows of gleaming fangs. "But they won't arrive in time to save you, Charles. No one will." As it leaned in, breath hot on my face, a deafening crack split the air. The creature jerked backward, black blood spraying from a wound in its shoulder. Another crack, and Martinez howled as a bullet tore through his transformed body. Coast Guard snipers, firing from the helicopter. Standard bullets wouldn't kill these things, but they certainly got their attention. The larger creature roared in frustration, then fixed me with those burning amber eyes. "This isn't over, Charles. The bite doesn't require my survival. Once transformed, you'll continue our work." Before I could process its words, it lunged forward with blinding speed, jaws clamping down on my shoulder. Pain unlike anything I'd ever experienced tore through me as teeth sank deep into flesh and bone. Then it released me, pushing me toward the edge of the platform. "See you on the other side, Charles." I teetered on the brink, blood pouring from the bite wound, my vision blurring. The last thing I saw before falling was the creature that had been Martinez following its master into the darkness of the rig, both retreating from the gunfire raining down from above. Then I was falling, the cold Gulf waters rushing up to meet me. The impact drove what little air remained from my lungs. Darkness closed in as I sank beneath the waves, consciousness slipping away. I awoke in a Coast Guard hospital 3 days later. They told me I was lucky. A Coast Guard diver had spotted me floating in the water and pulled me out before I drowned. The bite wound on my shoulder had required over 60 stitches and would leave me with limited mobility in that arm for the rest of my life. Of the 8-person night crew on Deepwater Horizon 2, I was the only survivor. The official report cited a security breach by unknown assailants and possible terrorist activity. The bodies of my colleagues were recovered, all showing signs of animal attacks. Martinez's body was never found. I told them everything, the creatures, the transformations, the conversations. They nodded politely and noted possible traumatic hallucinations in my file. The psychiatrist suggested that my mind had created a supernatural explanation because the reality, human attackers capable of such brutality, was too difficult to process. I almost believed them, almost convinced myself that shock and fear had twisted my perceptions. The scratched steel doors, the inhuman strength, the regeneration, all exaggerated by trauma and darkness. Then came the first full moon after the attack. It started with fever and pain in my wounded shoulder. I checked into a motel far from any populated areas, chaining myself to the radiator as a precaution. I told myself I was being paranoid, that werewolves weren't real despite what I'd seen. As moonlight spilled through the window, the pain intensified. My bones began to shift beneath my skin. Muscles tore and reformed. My consciousness remained intact throughout the transformation, trapped inside a body that was changing into something monstrous. I howled as my humanity slipped away, replaced by hunger and rage and power. The chains didn't hold. I don't remember everything I did that night. Flashes of memory remain, running through woods on all fours, the taste of warm blood, the thrill of the hunt. When dawn came, I found myself naked in a forest clearing, covered in blood that wasn't mine. That was 6 months ago. I've learned to control it somewhat, to channel the transformation, to hunt animals instead of humans when the moon rises. But control is tenuous. Each month, the beast inside grows stronger, more demanding. The voice in my head, that same guttural growl I heard on the rig, whispers constantly about power, about embracing my true nature, about hunting the most dangerous game. I've established a routine. When the full moon approaches, I drive to remote wilderness areas, chain myself in abandoned buildings with reinforced restraints, and pray they hold until dawn. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I live with the guilt of what happens on the nights they don't. 3 nights ago marked the 7th full moon since the incident on Deepwater Horizon 2. I'd driven deep into the Texas Hill Country, finding an abandoned ranger station miles from the nearest hiking trail. The chains I now use are industrial grade, anchored to concrete foundations I pour myself in the days before transformation. As the moon rose, I felt the familiar agony begin, bones cracking, muscles tearing, my very DNA rewriting itself under the lunar influence. My screams turned to howls as fur erupted from my skin, and my consciousness retreated to a small corner of my mind, watching helplessly as the beast took control. That night should have been like the others. The creature testing its bonds until dawn, perhaps breaking free to hunt deer or wild boar, but remaining in uninhabited areas. I'd chosen this location specifically for its isolation, but as moonlight filtered through the broken windows of the ranger station, I caught a scent that made my transformed body go rigid. Human, close, multiple humans. Hikers, I realized with horror, as the beast's superior senses cataloged their smells. 5 of them, probably lost or seeking shelter from the unexpected cold front that had swept in after sunset. They were heading directly for the ranger station, the beast strained against the chains with renewed purpose, sensing prey. I fought for control, clinging to what remained of my humanity, trying to push through the haze of bloodlust. "Hello, is someone in there?" A voice called from outside, accompanied by the bobbing beams of flashlights. We saw light through the windows. The beast growled low, and I fought to suppress the sound. If they heard, they might investigate rather than flee. "Probably just some other hikers," another voice said. "The weather report didn't mention anything about temperatures dropping like this. Maybe they have extra supplies." Footsteps on the wooden porch, the door handle turning, the beast's muscles tensed, ready. In that moment of pure desperation, I managed to seize control, not completely, but enough to let out a warning howl so terrifying it made the floorboards vibrate. The sound was primal, a clear threat that bypassed human rational thought and struck directly at ancient fears encoded in DNA. The footsteps retreated rapidly, voices raised in alarm, flashlight beams swinging wildly as they ran back the way they'd come. The beast raged, throwing itself against the chains until blood flowed from rubbed raw wrists and ankles. I held on to that sliver of control, forcing it to direct its fury at the restraints rather than pursuing the hikers. By dawn, I was myself again. bloodied, exhausted, but human. And for the first time since the transformation began, I'd managed to assert control during the change. Not much, just enough to save lives. But it was something. That small victory gave me hope. Perhaps the curse wasn't absolute. Perhaps I could learn to master it completely. I spent the next 2 days researching folklore, myth, scientific anomalies, anything that might explain what I'd become and how to control it. The internet was full of useless Hollywood fantasies about silver bullets and wolfsbane, but buried among the fiction were occasional fragments that resonated with my experience. The full moon was the strongest trigger, yes, but emotional states, particularly rage and fear, could induce partial transformations at any time. Some accounts suggested that werewolves who accepted their condition gained greater control than those who fought it. Acceptance seemed like surrender, but I was running out of options. Last night I drove to an even more remote location, an abandoned oil field in West Texas, miles from anything. As the moon rose, I didn't fight the change but embraced it, mentally preparing for the pain, acknowledging the beast as part of me rather than an invader. The transformation was still agonizing, but different somehow, clearer. When it was complete, I found I could still think, still reason, though my instincts were heightened to a predatory edge that made every movement, every scent, every sound register as either threat or prey. I tested the limits of this new awareness, finding I could direct my transformed body with conscious intent. The urge to hunt remained overwhelming, but I could choose the target, directing myself toward wild game rather than any human settlements. That night I ran free across the Texas desert, reveling in strength and speed beyond human capacity. I took down a wild boar, feeding the beast's hunger while maintaining enough control to ensure it didn't seek more dangerous prey. By dawn, I understood that fighting the transformation had only made it stronger, more uncontrollable. Paradoxically, by accepting this curse, I might eventually master it. As I drove back towards civilization, a news report on the radio caught my attention. 3 workers at an offshore oil rig in the Gulf had been found dead, their bodies showing signs of animal attack. The surviving crew described a massive wolf-like creature that walked upright. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It had found new hunting grounds. I knew then what I had to do. The creature that attacked Deepwater Horizon 2, the alpha that started this nightmare, was still out there, still hunting, still creating others like me. And I was the only one who knew what it was, who could stop it. The irony wasn't lost on me. To hunt the monster, I would need to become the monster. To save lives, I would need to embrace the very curse I'd been fighting. It took 2 weeks to prepare. I liquidated my savings, bought a small boat with a powerful motor, and waited for the next full moon. My plan was simple but desperate. Return to the area where Deepwater Horizon 2 had been located. Transform under controlled conditions, and use my enhanced senses to track the alpha. The night of the full moon found me drifting in the Gulf of Mexico, 30 miles offshore. The coordinates of the original rig glowed on my GPS as I secured the boat's controls and prepared for what was coming. As moonlight touched my skin, I surrendered to the change willingly for the first time. The transformation remained painful, but proceeded with surprising swiftness. Within minutes, my humanity was cloaked in fur and fang, but my mind remained largely my own. Standing on the deck of the small craft, I raised my muzzle to the night air, scenting. The beast's senses were incredible. I could smell fish schools moving below the surface, detect the distant exhaust of ships miles away, and there, the musky, distinctive scent of another werewolf. Following the scent led me to a new drilling platform 15 miles northeast of the original location. Like Deepwater Horizon 2, it was minimally staffed at night. Easy hunting for a predator that could mimic human voices and plan strategic attacks. I approached silently, slipping into the water and swimming the last mile to avoid detection by the rig's radar. Climbing the support structure with clawed hands was effortless, the beast's strength making the ascent trivial. As I pulled myself onto a lower platform, a familiar scent hit me. Blood. Fresh blood. I was too late for at least one member of the crew. Moving silently across the deck, I tracked the Alpha by scent. It was hunting methodically, just as it had on my rig, testing, playing with its prey before striking. I found the first body near the equipment storage, a young man, throat torn out, eyes still wide with terror. He hadn't been dead long. The blood was still warm. A growl escaped me before I could suppress it, not from hunger but from rage. This senseless killing, this sadistic game playing with human lives. It wasn't necessity or even simple predation. It was sport. I thought I smelled something familiar, a voice rasped from the shadows. The prodigal son returns. The Alpha emerged into the moonlight, exactly as I remembered it. Massive, scarred, those intelligent amber eyes gleaming with malevolent awareness. Behind it slunk a smaller figure I recognized despite the transformation. Martinez, still following his master. "You shouldn't have come back, Charles," the Alpha continued, circling me slowly. "You were free, clear of this territory." I straightened to my full height, finding I stood nearly as tall as the Alpha in my transformed state. "You're still killing. It needs to end." The creature laughed, that terrible mixture of growl and human amusement. "End? This is only beginning. Do you know how long I've hunted these waters? How many rigs I've cleansed? How many like you I've created?" "Why?" I demanded, my transformed voice rough but intelligible. "Why create others only to abandon them? Some follow," it gestured toward Martinez. "Most don't, but all serve a purpose. Spreading confusion, creating myths, distracting authorities from the real predator." Its jaws pulled back in a grotesque smile. "You're the first to return hunting me. I'm almost impressed." Without warning, it lunged. Despite my new strength and reflexes, the Alpha was faster, centuries of experience guiding its attack. Claws raked across my chest, tearing deep furrows that would have killed a human instantly. I responded with a backhand swing that connected solidly with its muzzle, sending it crashing into a stack of equipment. Martinez moved to attack, but a snarl from the Alpha stopped him. "No," it commanded. "This one is mine." We circled each other, both bleeding black blood that steamed in the cool night air. I was stronger than I'd been as a human, faster, more resilient, but the Alpha was still superior in every way. Each exchange left me more damaged, while it seemed barely affected by my counterattacks. "You can't win, Charles," it said as we separated after another brutal clash. "You're too young, too inexperienced. The transformation has barely taken root in you." It was right. I was losing. Another few minutes and I would be too injured to continue. I needed an advantage. My gaze fell on a nearby pressure gauge for one of the natural gas lines. The needle hovered in the red zone, dangerously high pressure. An idea formed, desperate, likely suicidal, but potentially effective. I backed toward the gauge, seemingly retreating from the Alpha's advance. "Maybe you're right," I said, drawing its attention to my words rather than my position. "Maybe I can't beat you in direct combat." The Alpha stalked forward, confident in its superiority. "Finally, wisdom. Submit, and perhaps I'll let you join us rather than feed on you." "I didn't say I was surrendering," I replied, and with one powerful swipe, I tore the pressure gauge from the pipe behind me. Natural gas exploded outward with devastating force, the pressurized stream hitting the Alpha directly. It howled in pain and confusion as the invisible gas enveloped it, the chemical smell overwhelming its sensitive nose. I fumbled in the equipment pouch I'd strapped to my transformed body before the change, extracting the emergency flare I'd brought with me. One spark near that gas cloud would create an inferno that not even a werewolf could survive. "Charles, wait," the Alpha said, backing away from the hissing gas, genuine fear in its voice for the first time. "Think about what you're doing. You're one of us now. This is your nature." "No," I replied, striking the flare against the metal deck. "I choose what nature to embrace." The flare ignited, its crimson light momentarily illuminating the scene. The Alpha and Martinez crouched in the expanding gas cloud. My transformed body silhouetted against the night sky, the dead crewman a crumpled shape nearby. I hurled the flare directly into the heart of the gas leak. The explosion was immediate and catastrophic. A fireball erupted, engulfing both werewolves in roaring flames. Their howls of agony cut through the night as fire consumed fur, flesh, and bone. The blast knocked me backward, sending me over the edge of the platform into the Gulf waters below. The cold shock of the water brought momentary clarity. Looking up, I could see the drilling platform partially engulfed in flames, secondary explosions rocking its structure as the fire reached other pressurized systems. Emergency sirens began to wail as the surviving crew responded to the disaster. I needed to leave before rescue boats arrived. I swam back to my small craft, my transformed body cutting through the water with powerful strokes despite my injuries. By the time I reached the boat, I could see Coast Guard helicopters already responding to the rig's distress signals. Pulling myself aboard, I collapsed on the deck, blood flowing freely from dozens of deep wounds. The transformation would hold until dawn. My accelerated healing, the only thing keeping me alive after the battle. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I wondered if I'd truly ended the threat or merely delayed it. Had the Alpha finally met its end in that inferno? Or would it somehow survive even that? When dawn came, I reverted to human form, the pain of transformation compounding my injuries. I managed to start the boat and head for a secluded cove along the Texas coast, where I could recover without questions. 3 days later, news reports confirmed 8 casualties on the rig, 6 crew members and 2 unidentified individuals, whose remains were too badly burned for immediate identification. The official cause was listed as an equipment malfunction leading to gas explosion, with no mention of animal attacks or mysterious creatures. It's been 2 months since that night. The full moon has come and gone twice, and each time I've transformed with increasing control. The Alpha's death seems to have weakened the curse's hold somehow, or perhaps my acceptance of it has given me mastery I lacked before. I've taken a job as a night security guard at a storage facility in a small coastal town, isolated enough to be safe if I lose control, close enough to the Gulf to monitor for any signs that the Alpha somehow survived. Sometimes in dreams I hear its voice again. This isn't over, Charles. The bite doesn't require my survival. I wake from these nightmares drenched in sweat, heart pounding. But as days turn to weeks and weeks to months, the dreams come less frequently. I don't know if I've truly destroyed the creature that cursed me or if it's still out there, regenerating slowly, planning revenge. I don't know if I'll ever be free of what I've become or if I'm destined to battle the beast within for the rest of my life. What I do know is that I've found purpose in my curse. There are others like me out there, turned against their will, struggling to control what they've become. Some will fail, becoming monsters that prey on the innocent. Some may succeed, finding the balance I've begun to achieve. Either way, I'll be waiting, hunting or helping as needed. It's not the life I would have chosen, but it's the one I have now. As the sun sets over the Gulf of Mexico, I look toward the horizon where oil rigs shine like distant stars. I can almost feel the Alpha's presence still, a phantom pain like an amputated limb. Come find me if you're still out there, I whisper to the gathering darkness. I'll be ready. The scars on my shoulder throb in response, a reminder of what I was, what I am, and what I might yet become. The curse of the werewolf isn't just the transformation of the body, it's the transformation of the soul, the constant battle between human conscience and animal instinct. Finding balance doesn't end the fight, it just makes it bearable. Night falls, and with it comes the familiar itch beneath my skin, the restlessness in my bones. Not the full moon yet, but its influence grows stronger each night as it approaches fullness. I lock the gates of the storage facility, check the security cameras, and prepare for my shift. Just another night watchman with secrets in his blood and silver shackles in his backpack, just in case. The Texas moon rises over the Gulf, casting long shadows across the world. In one of those shadows, I wait and watch. No longer just prey, no longer just predator. Something in between, something new. Something that waits in the darkness, ready for whatever comes with the tide.